Alright, hi there guys, welcome to a very interesting tutorial. So since this is my first tutorial, we will just be taking it easy, not doing anything crazy, but hopefully there'll be something for everyone. We'll touch on linear workflow, different settings and things you're going to want to know if you're using After Effects. But yeah, we'll just be sticking in After Effects today, nothing 3D. So let's get started and bring up a new composition and we'll be making a cool little effect. So, there we go. 1920 by 1080, that's what we're going to do. You have all sorts of different options. You can do 2K, 4K, whatever you want. Square pixels is what we're going to do because we're going to be putting this on screens or, HD TVs. That's what you want square pixels for. If you know what you want, if you're looking for a special effect, you'll probably know which one of these that you want to choose. Or if you're rendering to an older TV or something, then maybe you want to do PAL or NTSC. Frame rates, usually the one where you're going to have kind of a little bit of confusion or decisions to make. So we're going to be doing 60 frames per second because we are filming for YouTube and YouTube can handle 60 FPS. But if you're making this as a DVD for a TV or something else, the safer ones are 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second, because if the TV doesn't run at least 60 hertz, it's not going to be able to render your video at the correct frame rate, so we'll probably drop some frames and will look kind of weird. But say it's your first day, you just bought a new camera, it's kind of an older camera because you don't have enough money to kind of get one of those fancy, really expensive Blackmagic cameras, which aren't that expensive, but anyways, you got an older camera and you're wondering, what are all these I's and P's, what's going on here, what do I choose? So usually you'll probably see 60i or 30p. And what does that mean if you're filming? So if you have 60i, what that means is 60 interlaced fields per second. And so you're going to want to choose 29.97 because when you convert it down to frames per second, essentially it's 29.97. If you're filming at 30p, that's 30 progressive frames per second, which is going to be, 30 frames per second. 24 is kind of film standard, but they're moving it up to 48. The Hobbit was filmed in 48, so, more frames, the smoother it looks. And then, so you have all these different options, and you can kind of figure it out. But yeah, so we'll be doing 60. We'll hit OK. And so we're in our new composition. We're going to hit Control Y to make a new solid, which it's always good to learn the shortcuts. We're going to call it Top. And then we're going to hit Control single quotes to bring up our grid. If you go over to Edit, Preferences, Grids and Guides, you can see mine is a little different. It's set up for the tutorial so that it's very small. So 5 grid lines. There are no subdivisions, so 1 is the least you can do. And then we're going to zoom in here. So if you hold Alt and zoom in with the scroll wheel, it will zoom into wherever your mouse is. Very handy. We're going to turn on Snap to Grid, so View, Snap to Grid, or Control Shift single quotes. And then we're going to get our rectangle tool, click right on the center there, hold Alt and Shift and Control, and bring our square out. We'll turn on Title Action Save so we can see that it is in the middle. And then what we want to do is we want to double click on the very edge of this mask. We don't want to double click on the center. It's going to open it up in its own kind of layer thing where you can edit it, do whatever you want, and you can change it in here too, but we're not going to do that. So double click on the very edge, bring up this border, make sure you got the rotate symbol up, rotate it 90 degrees. We are set. Highlight this top point, bring it down to the middle. Highlight this bottom point, bring it over here. Hit Control R to bring up your ruler, get a guide, and make sure you can either put it on the top or the bottom, but just make sure it's like one above the center line. We're just going to drag this over here, doesn't really matter. And drag this one over here. Then we'll zoom in, and so we were one above, so we'll bring that down. At least I believe we were one above. Yeah. So that way that's the grid line you're going for. Alright, so Control single quotes, get rid of our grid, turn off our title action save, View, clear guides, we are set. We've got this sweet looking slash mark. What we're going to do is duplicate it and name this bottom one bottom, or BTM. And we're going to change the color. So Control-Shift-Y to bring up your solid settings. And we're going to make it like an orange. That looks cool. And you can also go layer solid settings. So we're going to bring a new layer in. Actually, we want a null object. It's going to work better. So layer, new, null object, and then effect, expression controls. We want slider control. Go up to the slider control, hit Control D, call the top one top, the bottom one BTM. And then so for top, we're going to hit MM to bring up the mask options. We're going to alt-click mask expansion, take this pick whip, click on our null object, and bring the pick whip up to the slider on top. Same thing for bottom, hit M twice, alt-click expansion, click on our null object, bring this up to the slider on bottom. And then so for bottom, we're going to take the feather and maybe do like 7, not too much. Go up to our null object, which we now have the sliders to. And so the top one we'll just leave at 0, and the bottom one we'll do -2, maybe. And actually, wait, no. The bottom one we'll leave at 0. The top one we'll do -2. -1. -2. Let's do -2. That's going to look better. There we go. So we got our slash mark. It looks sweet. Really quickly, let's enable linear workflow. So layer, new, adjustment layer. This isn't how you do it. I'm just going to illustrate something real quickly. So stylize, glow. We're just going to add a glow so we can kind of see what linear workflow is going to do for us. So we'll recenter this. And so if you're looking at this, you can see, sure, the glow is applied. We can kind of, make the radius bigger. If we duplicate the glow, we can even see it affecting it. But when you want to use linear workflow, essentially, you'll probably know because you'll be coming out of a 3D program like V-Ray or, Krakatoa, ThinkBox programs, maybe even Mental Ray if you're rendering in EXRs. You'll know that you want to linearize your workflow. And essentially what linearization is normally you have a gamma curve that's like that, and you linearize that gamma curve to kind of, essentially, it creates another gamma curve that corrects for that linearization, so that essentially the end result on an sRGB monitor is going to be linear. So if you don't have it, you'll know because your colors won't be correct. So if you render out and you put some EXRs in After Effects and you're like, why aren't my colors correct? Why can't I see anything? This is probably a problem. Or if they come out in black and white, it's probably because you have it on 8 bits per channel. And we need it to be at least 16, if not 32, depending on what you're working with. So we're going to click on that 8 bits per channel, change it to 16. Working space, we want sRGB, and we want to linearize the working space. So immediately you're going to see the glow is completely different. Looks a lot better. But you can get the same result with just duplicating the glow or whatever you want in the normal working space. It's just it's mainly if you're bringing things into After Effects or if you want certain effects to look different. So like if you have a bokeh effect going on, you probably will want to linearize your workflow because otherwise the blur just ends up looking very weird. If you're doing anything in kind of 16 bits or 32 bits per channel, linearizing your workflow usually helps, especially with glows and lights and all sorts of things. So it's always a good idea. It's definitely good to know about, but you can kind of play around with it, see what works best for you. We're going to turn off our glow and add a transition. We'll just make this one kind of really simple. So we'll do a linear wipe and we'll keyframe the transition complete and wipe angle. Make sure we're at the beginning of our timeline. Transition complete is going to be 100% and 270. So we want it to come on that direction. We'll make this 30 frames in total. So we'll come to the middle. bring it down to 0, and then hit U on your adjustment layer. It's going to bring up whatever you have a stopwatch clicked on so that you can edit the keyframes. U is always a very, very handy key, always a very good key to learn. We're going to add a keyframe to the wipe angle, and then we're going to go page down to go 1 ahead and bring the wipe angle to 90. And then we'll go to our 30 frame mark and go to 100, so it wipes off. And you can alt-click, hold Alt, or no, it's Control. Control-click will change kind of your display so that you're looking in frames or seconds. So I guess this is actually 30 seconds, which should be 30 frames, but whatever. I'm not going to argue. And then we'll feather it just a little bit, just so we get kind of, doesn't look as weird. So that's all good. We're going to Control C on the linear wipe, and we're going to copy it onto our top and bottom. And then, so we're going to hit Control A and then hit U so we can kind of see what we're doing. Take our top and bottom, we're going to duplicate them, and then drag the duplicates down to the bottom, and change the color over here to maybe orange so we can kind of see. We're going to call this one top B, and then bottom B. Feel free to change these if it makes more sense to you. I know my labeling is not always the best, but especially if you're working with other people, it's usually a good idea. So the reason we did that is we want to add some mats, because we want this slash to go across and leave some kind of burning residue going on. So we're going to, it doesn't matter what color we do for this. Actually, depending on what you're doing, you might want to do black. Black is going to be the safest for adding some fractal noise. Fractal noise is always good. So contrast up, brightness down. That doesn't look quite flamey. Maybe dynamic progressive. Whatever, we'll see what it looks like. So we'll call this matte. Bring it on top of bottom, or top B, and then we'll choose Luma matte, and then we'll duplicate it. Bring the second matte on top of bottom, and we'll choose Luma matte. So if we disable our top layers really quick, we can see what it's doing. It's leaving this burning residue, which looks great. So what we'll do is we'll go up to our null object again. We'll go Effect, Expression Controls, Slider Control, or not Slider Control. We want an Angle Control because we are Angle Control. So sweet. We've got our mats up. If we alt-click the evolution and then go up to our null object again, we can pick whip this new Angle Control angle. Minimize that. And then if we go to the second mat, alt-click the evolution, we can go up to our null object and I'll click the same angle control. That way we can set both of them all at once. Hit Control A and hit U twice so that you can kind of see what you're doing again. Alright, then we're going to alt-click this angle and go time times 250. And so what that's going to do is once this layer once we see, that layer is going to be moving, which is always good. And then, so we want, the burn layer to stay on the bottom. So if we hit U down here, we can see kind of the keyframes, and we're just going to delete these last two. Alright, now that we delete those two keyframes, we need to turn off this adjustment layer, and then we can see our burn. Looks beautiful, just left right over. Perfect. So we're pretty much done with that composition. So we're going to go in here, name it slash, and then we're going to duplicate slash, and we're going to call this one slash BG. And then before we do anything to that, we're going to make a new composition. We'll call this one main, and then we'll get a background in there. So layer, new, I can't even get new solid up, so Control Y. And we'll make it a blue maybe. That's good. And then we'll add a texture in here. So and we'll put the texture above the blue object. We'll change it to multiply. And then what we can do, since we did it that way, we can come here to Effects, Color Correction, Levels, and we can invert the colors. So essentially all the black parts will become white and all the white parts will become black. And then we can crush it down. We don't want it too dark. And then what we can do is we can make a new solid, make this one black, and then come up here, choose the ellipse tool, double click on it, and then change the mask to subtract, hit F, and bring the feathering out, till it looks good. Maybe that's good. And then maybe a little too dark, so let's bring our slash out below the black solid. Go a couple keyframes in so we can kind of see the color. Looks good, but we could do one more thing. Make a white solid. Same thing, double click the ellipse tool, but instead of setting it to subtract, just feather it out and change the mode to overlay. And if you don't have mode, you can hit F4 and it should appear. So that's a little too harsh, so maybe hit T on the black solid, bring the transparency down a little, and on the white solid maybe bring it down a little. That looks good. Alright, so now that we've got our slash out here, we got our burn. It's cool, but it doesn't really look like it's part of the background. And that's a problem. So we're going to go into our project, and earlier we made this slash BG. We're going to double click that to open that up, and we're going to click on our null, and we want to go to our angle control and alt click it. So essentially the evolution that we pick whipped here from the burn layers is not going to be getting any angles anymore, so it's just going to stay the same. So once the burn comes on, it's not going to be moving around. And then we can go back into our main composition and we can add this BG below slash and duplicate it. And then, maybe we want to change the color of the BGs to maybe like red. No, there's too much red there. Cyan. And so what we're going to do is we're going to turn off our slash so we can just see the BG layers. Turn off that one, and we're going to go Effect, Color Correction, Tint. And for this top one, we're going to want it to be black. So just make sure both colors are black. And then we're going to go to Matte Choker. And then on this bottom one, we're going to just take these two, hit Control C, go to the bottom one, and just paste it. And you can label them if you want as well. We're going to make this one white. And then so we'll enable that layer so we can kind of see what we're working with. And essentially what we want to do is we want to bring this choke amount out so it kind of looks like the edge of, maybe a hole of some sort. And then if we bring this black one out, we can barely see it. Can kind of get it to look like that. And if we bring back on our slash, we can see how the slash kind of resides within that. And so it looks like it made an imprint on the background. And then the slash is burning within that imprint. And so, that's a little kind of cheating thing to do. And then the black layer doesn't really look like it's mixing with the background that much, right? So before we do anything, let's add a glow to our slash. So stylize, glow, and we're going to want to use maybe AB colors. And let's add some red. Not too red, but a little bit of red to that glow. That looks pretty good, adding a little bit of red to that. And so what we're going to do is come into the background and maybe change this to maybe a little more orange. So maybe instead, it's going to be this dark orange. Then you can kind of see what it's doing to the black. And then maybe we'll sample something off the background, kind of this dark blue. And so you kind of got an orange and blue looking thing, and it just gives it this little touch that helps make that blend with the background. And then we'll go to the lighter one, and maybe we'll add a glow of its own. And this one needs to be AB colors as well. So actually, instead of making a new glow, let's just copy and paste the glow we put on the slash. So that's just going to be faster. And obviously, we don't want the radius to be so high. And we want the intensity not to be quite so insane. That way it just kind of, it's reflecting off the white a little. Maybe adds a little more, oomph to the composition. And so that's looking good. So, we got the slash, it burns on, leaves this residue. The residue looks like it belongs there. We are set. Now we're ready to render it out. One thing to remember, let's save it. /tutorial is that when you're rendering in After Effects, you go Composition, Add to Render Queue, or you can hit Control-M, which is what I do. I almost forgot where it was on that menu. And then so lossless, you want essentially it to be lossless. So AVI is fine, the lossless default is fine, because After Effects does a crappy job of rendering. So you always want to do something lossless. You can do a PNG sequence as well. Maybe that's going to be easier for you. We're going to do a PNG sequence because when you go into Premiere, you have to set it up the right way if you're going to do an image sequence of some sort. If you try to do EXRs, Premiere won't actually be able to read them, which sucks. But unless they've added that in CC. So RBG, we don't need alpha for us, but you might need this at some point. If you're trying to render out a matte of some sort or something. Maybe you're using some color keying and you just want the matte of the color key. Maybe you just want to render out the alpha. Always that option. Millions of colors, definitely. Maybe even do trillions. And then pre-multiplied matted, that's fine. So, hit OK. We'll render out our sequence here. And as you see, I've already rendered it out. So, we will jump right into Premiere. Alright, so we're in Premiere now. So, we'll name this slash, maybe, slash a animation. Hit OK. And then so here we have to kind of go to our settings, make sure we're at 60 frames per second, 1920 by 1080 square pixels, no fields, we want progressive, 60 FPS time code, 4800 Hertz is fine. And the reason we're doing that is because since we're importing pictures, it won't ask us to change our sequence. Or it will, but it would ask us the wrong way. So essentially, we just have to bring in our sequence. So import. Image sequence. Then we just can drag it right in here. And it says change sequence settings. We want to just keep our existing sequence. And there we go. We got it all set up. So we're going to hit Control-M. You might want to add audio or something else, or maybe add some text in here. But, we're good. So we're going to hit Control-M. and then you name whatever you want your sequence to be. And then we're going to do H.264 because that's what works the best with YouTube. And then for settings, we're going to go to 60. So essentially what this looks like, if I can expand the window here, is we want it to be at the frame rate to be 60 frames per second, 1920 by 1080, square pixels. It doesn't really matter what you choose for TV standards at this point. Profile is going to be high, levels 5.1. We want a VBR 2 pass, and then we want the target bit rate to be 12, and then the maximum bit rate to be 15. And then for audio, we want AAC, 4800 Hertz, and then stereo. And then we want audio quality high at 320 kilobytes per second. And for this, YouTube has different standards for their bit rates and stuff depending on the size of your video, so you might want to check that out if you're going to post this to YouTube. But 1215 works pretty well for me. Otherwise, if you're doing something really high end, maybe 2025. And then we're going to check use maximum render quality. This isn't always necessary. You may want to do some kind of tests on your own to see if this is something that you're going to want. Essentially, what it's doing is it's going to give us better scaling. So the image is going to be a little sharper, and then as it goes to different devices, it might scale better. But it's such a little difference, and it takes a lot more time. But if you do have a lot of different effects within Premiere, it might be a good idea because it does help those out a lot. Also, having Mercury Playback Engine activated is pretty good. There's a way you can do it even if you don't have a supported video card. You just have to add your video card to the list. And there's tutorials about that online. I might make one later. But yeah, so we're going to keep it on just to get that little bit of extra quality, and then we're just going to hit export. Alright, and that's it. So, probably going to export the video. I might add a little bit of extra stuff, but essentially, you got the idea. I hope everyone's learned something in this tutorial and maybe made a cool effect. There's a lot of different ways you can use this, a lot of different things you can do. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you again next time. Alright, so if you're wondering why it suddenly jumped from, the linear slash and now there's this curve slash, the tutorial was going on way too long, so I separated out the curve slash portion. For those of you who do want to check that out, it is still uploaded. The link is going to be in the description for you guys. But I figured a lot of people wouldn't really care that much about that, and they're more interested in, the Premiere, the After Effects to Premiere aspects. So that's going to be included in both of them. But I hope you guys enjoyed it anyways. You've heard this before, so take care. Have a great day.